Welcome to Changing the Perception of Blindness, one conversation at a time, where we aim to break down barriers, demystify blindness, and promote real and lasting change. Join host David Steinmetz as he connects us with professionals who are making a positive impact in the community. These leaders help empower individuals who are blind or have other disabilities to live a full and inclusive life. Let's lean in as David kicks off today's conversation.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Changing the Perception of Blindness, one conversation at a time. I am David Steinmetz and really excited for today's show. First and foremost, I need to thank my sponsor, Arizona Industries for the Blind, who is dedicated to its mission of inspiring people who are blind to achieve their highest goals and aspirations by creating and sustaining employment opportunities and providing quality product and services to our customers. So this show is really geared around helping business, helping the community become more aware of the capabilities and abilities of people who are blind or visually impaired. And, I've been doing a lot of thinking and consideration as we head into the new year. And there's a lot of conversations about what is a good job or what is work and the value that you get from it. And as I kind of thought back over the last year and in the last many years that I've been with AIB, the opportunities that working has given me, from meeting all new kind of connections and building that relationship with my peers in private and public sector, as well as in public policy, to having growth opportunities in my career, as well as from a personal level, making some milestones of buying a home and helping my kids buy a car, and making memories by going out and having family vacations. And all those things are probably the same for a lot of people, or just about everybody who has that dream and aspiration to better themselves and their families. And that's one part of work. But for people who are blind, like myself, having work also means a lot of other things. And I've really learned from a personal side of who I am, acknowledging my disability, acknowledging and providing opportunities or change in that blindness, and as well as in business. So there might have been some times where I failed at a project, but all those things I've learned from. And it's that personal growth that has helped me continue to work on changing the perception of blindness, as well as to live the life that I want. So I'm really excited that that's what this show is about. And here with me today, we've got Chris LaFollette, President and CEO of Arizona Industries for the Blind. And Chris and I have conversations on a very regular basis where we just sit down and we don't know where the topics come from or where they're going to go, and we kind of just let it roll here today. So let's get right into it. Chris, thanks for being here.
Hey, David, thanks for having me. I appreciate it greatly. And actually, I'm looking forward to the format. Not so much structure, but really good conversation. And we tend to do this 2 or 3 times a month at least, where we have good discussions, either in your office or mine or wherever it may be. And I'm looking forward to it, David.
Awesome. Thank you. So we talk AIB as an employer. It's an enterprise nonprofit organization where we provide solutions to customers, whether it's in warehouse and distribution or other lines of business, to providing a valid solution for people who are blind to have a career. And in our conversations, we talk a lot about careers or jobs. And so in our community, there's a lot of conversations about good jobs and what does that really mean. And I'd love to get your insights and your perspective of what good jobs are and how AIB and how the rest of the business community can get in on creating these opportunities.
It's a great question, David, and some of the things, and I will speak off the cuff a little bit this morning if you allow me to, but definition of a good job. societal, we'll go back and say, what's a good job? Well, something that I can, help my family. And you mentioned, vacation, meet and pay for a mortgage, pay for my daughter's wedding. Is it meet the bills? Is it to meet the concerns so you can have health insurance, so you can live the American dream? David, it's so difficult because so many different people and there's so many different ideas out there what the American dream is today. It's changed. And again, what we define as a good job, not what the government decides, is different. So, years past, maybe because we're a little older, your parents, my parents, a good job was something they said, hey, you go to college, you graduate, and you get a job, and you work for 35 years, and you've got great health benefits, and you have a retirement. Well, today, they talk about, with social media, I can go and do a podcast and talk for an hour a day, 2 hours a day, and I can go out and take pictures of myself at my vacation, and that's a job. And sometimes it's very fruitful. Can that be something someone who's blind or visually impaired or disabled do? By all means, there's nothing. To me, when I define what a good job is really, it goes to supporting my thought, my role, my idea of what my life looks like to me. And I'm fortunate I get to define that. I'm the person who really is in charge. So it's difficult because societal has one and I may have another. But to me, I go back to something that allows me to pursue what I believe my happiness, my goals are in life. Now, it just goes and correlates with the fact that I've been in this channel, this arena for 26 years now, that my passion is creating opportunities for people who are blind, or visually impaired, or disabled. So it goes hand in hand. To me, it's a great job. It's not even a good job, David. Mm-hmm. But there's people out there who says, hey, wouldn't you want to do something else? Well, I'd probably like to, go sail around the world, but I don't think there's a lot of money in that for me right now. I sure would like to get in some landscaping. It's not a career I want to do, but it doesn't provide a living for me. At 55 years old, I like things that are probably a little bit more stable than most. But again, my definition for a good job is something that allows me to take care of not just myself, my family, help me do things like provide for them afterwards, if life insurance or insurance for health care or dental. It looks different than I was when I'm 20 or 25, and I think you probably understand that more than most.
Yeah, I definitely understand that, and I think about it a lot of times and what other people in this market or industry would say. A good job is something that one, like you're saying, right, provides you a stable financial stability, provides you insurance, etc., lifts you up. But then there's others that say, well, you have to have a career path that you have. You may start in one spot that you think is a good job, and then end up saying, well, what I really want to do is, I started as a teacher. I really want to be a pilot, and so now I'm going to go and be a pilot. I don't understand where the difference is if you have the choice to work where you want to work, when you want to work, how you want to work. And I agree with you. Who is it to say, somebody that is doing this type of job is not a good job? There's plenty of people that are doing the things that they want to do, that they have the right talents and skills for, but someone else may look at that and go, you shouldn't be doing it. You should be doing this. And how do we change in some of those mindset to say this industry is not a good industry for someone who has a disability or someone who's blind, versus saying this is the path that they chose? How do we get there?
Well, it's one conversation at a time, I can tell you that. But, look, we have a lot of people who are elected officials that, tend to think they're the voice for all, and most, but a lot of times it's some in their agendas and their initiatives and whatever their lobbyists and who supports them. We have warehouse. We have a 3PL. We have a warehouse. And somebody says, well, working in a warehouse is not what I want to do. That's okay. We have other things that you can do, at AIB. We have BSCs, which go retail. We have DDS, which we have some in-office, a little quieter type of work, changing over printed document over digital. And there's other things that people can do at AIB, but other agencies like us have a lot of different opportunities, if not AIB, somewhere else. But for some reason, we have seen in, I would say, the last couple of years, where somebody wants to define what is a good job. Look, I'm sorry, David, you're not going to convince me that the color blue or black or green or yellow is the best color. You're not going to do that. And I feel like that's what's happening today. They're predicated on their desires rather than what somebody actually wants. You mentioned, at the end of the day is what is sustainable? What's wrong with working a job for 40 years? It was good enough for my parents. It was good enough for my grandparents and yours as well. Why do I want different? But if I want different, I should be able to get it. Now, that's some of the narrative they bring to the discussion that I happen to agree with. If there's something I want to do and I have the ability and skill set to do it, I need to do so. And if I don't have that skill set, then I probably need to have the tools or some type of knowledge or educational background to get it. But that being said, there's nothing wrong with being at the job you're at and loving the job you have, even if somebody deems it not a good job. But David, I tell you what, we talked about some of those people, and they're talking about, well, you shouldn't be at the same job for so long. You need to do this, you need to do that. It's ironic. They've been at their job 20 and 25 years, but yet they don't like what we do. I think it's more looking at the program as a whole, and we've faced scrutiny for a lot of years for what we do. I'm very proud of what we do here at AIB. We pay a living wage. We have great opportunities for people to advance, not just personally, but socially. What would happen to somebody who's blind or visually impaired that may not be socialized? Is that person well-rounded? For them, maybe it works, but for most parts, people want and to be social. And so you bring that into the discussion as well. And if I'm comfortable somewhere, I'm going to do well. And I tend to find out that if I want to be an attorney today and all of a sudden it sounds good to me, but I realize I've got to wear a shirt or coat and tie every day, and I've got to drive into a city or take public transportation into a city, and I'll use you as an example. That's a 2-hour ride for you to come into work,
right,
and a 2-hour ride go home. Well, look, if I want to work from home, if I want to work in a call center environment, then I should be allowed to.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we advocate a lot from the local to national about informed choice, right? And having that choice of I want to work at AIB because it's a job that I enjoy or whatever, and I get the experience that I need. And if I find out that, I can do more, AIB is there to support you in terms of go do it. If that's what you want to do, get the training, get the skill sets, and go and do it. We can connect you with, vocational rehabilitation, and you can go do what you need to do. So having a career and, is that personal choice and not allowing others to do it. So advocacy is a really important way of doing that. And I think also, what we do through this podcast or through our outreach activities, right, is bringing that awareness to business and making sure that other employers around Arizona and across the nation understand that just because I can't see doesn't mean that I can't do the same job, and you should have the same expectations of me performing that job that you do of anybody else, and making sure that I have the tools and the training to be able to do that job. I can't step in and say I want to be a CFO and apply for a job and expect to get it if I don't have that experience. I'm going to ask you, do you think that it is an employer's position to say, well, you want to be a CFO, I'm going to train you, or is it the individual who's going to say, I need to go to school and become an accountant and get some experience and then become a CPA and so forth?
It's a good question, David. Look, one of the things and challenges in my position is to identify talent. Maybe somebody's good with numbers. They might be on the floor and they're a supervisor, or they're in packaging, and I realize they're good with numbers. Maybe you encourage somebody to do that. No different than, you encourage your child that you realize can kick really well, and you say, hey, maybe you want to be a punter in football. Maybe you want to play soccer. No different. You see talent. I think one of the things that we take advantage of is that we try to find the talent within, but also a person has to be able to speak for themselves. They've got to be able to self-advocate. They have to, and say, I'm interested in this. Well, the difference is if I'm not good with numbers, and I realize that, and my attention to detail is not what it needs to be, and if I say I want to be a CFO, then I'm going to encourage that person to really look. You need to go seek some knowledge, number one, some outside knowledge, some education, but at the same time, realize your weaknesses just as well as your strengths. I think we all can do that, self-awareness. But at the same time, realizing that I'm not sure what age pilots age out where they can't fly anymore. I want to say it's in their mid-60s. But if I'm 61 years old and I say, hey, I want to be a pilot and I want to do it for a living, well, that's a 4-year career. That's probably not wise. But I like to look at things that probably are sustainable and long-lasting. And if I see someone within our organization or others, and I cross paths of many, then I would encourage them to go after their dreams. No different than I do anybody who might be sighted or quote-unquote able-bodied. But it's up to the individual. But I think it's a little bit of both, David. I think it's up to the organization, but also the person, because at the end of the day, nobody's going to better represent themselves as themselves. You got to think about that. Who's best to speak on my part other than me? No different than you.
Absolutely.
So we've got to show that desire.
I think that's a really important point about self-advocacy. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, right?
Easier said.
Yeah, right. But if you don't define what it is that you want, and you can't articulate it, or you can't see the pathways to do that, and make sure that you're putting yourself in that position, you can't expect someone else to do it for you.
Fair.
And do you think that those conversations happen throughout, in terms of disability employment, from the beginning stages, right? Whether I just acquired a disability and I was a truck driver, I can no longer drive because I can't see. How do we have that conversation about realistic expectations, or those realistic careers? You mentioned being a pilot and 61. It might not be a good investment for you to go to school and train and get your hours. Do you think those conversations are had, or how can we make sure that those conversations are being had?
I think it's difficult to do, David, because the one thing you don't want to do is discourage somebody from going after their dream. It's difficult. We've been fortunate. A lot of states have programs. We've been able to work with ours pretty well with our state, and they do a good job. We got great service providers, and a shout out to them in no particular order: Savvy, FPC, and AZBVI do a great job of helping that person even before they get to the workforce, identifying some of their skill sets. But it comes back to some realization of what, hey, I want to be a basketball player and the NBA, and I'm 5'2". Okay, we probably ought to look at that differently. Hey, I want to be an NFL lineman and I weigh 127 pounds. There's some realization there. I need to understand what the challenges are, but really, what are prerequisites? Okay, a basketball player, usually you're tall, usually you need how to dribble, you need how to play some type of sport and have some type of athletic ability. And if I'm somebody who's not very athletic and I have the dream of getting into sport, then maybe there's other ways to do so. You don't have to necessarily be a player. There's other ways to get it. There's admin, there's coaches, there's scouts. There's so many different things to do. And some of the best scouts that I've ever come across were people that did not have long playing careers and or did not play the sport at all. And so that's a good understanding of what it could be to be associated. But I think giving the person opportunity just to try helps tremendously. But again, it doesn't do me any good if I want to be a chef. There's not many chefs that have the ability to sit down. If I've got a bad back, and I know I've got a bad back, and I'm standing for hours, and I have a problem with attention to detail, and I really don't like working long hours, then probably being a chef is not best for you. So those are some of the things that are very important. But you go back to really look at what the person's good at, and a person's understanding what they're good at as well. And that's always difficult, David, because somebody might believe that they're better at something than they actually are. And that's difficult. That is very difficult to put that person on a path or give them direction that they may not think they want to go. You know it's probably best. And experience and knowledge gives you that. Being in this industry for a long time, I've come across that. And somebody says, well, I'm interested in doing that. Hey, great, we can try that. But have you ever looked at this? So don't be afraid to give options. Sure. But again, I would tell you, I'd rather encourage than discourage.
Kind of fake it till you make it.
Well,
that's
look,
what I've been doing for 20 years. So, yeah, people are people, and it's really hard to try and provide all the resources and all the tools, and you see the potential in people, and yet they don't either see the potential in themselves, or they choose to say, I'm good where I'm at, and I'm comfortable, and I'm just gonna kind of stay where I'm at, and that's and there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that.
And when outside voices come in and say, well, you should be doing something different, then we kind of have that conflict. And what do we do with that conflict? How do we encourage or diminish those voices so that people can just live the life they want, like I said at the beginning, have a career that they choose as long as they want. And if they don't want to do it, then go do it somewhere else.
Well, you're exactly right. I think one thing that I think it's challenging for someone like me as well as yourself is enabling. We got to be careful in doing so. I see a lot of that. Believe it or not, I see a lot more from parents than I do actually agencies or anybody else, and either not believing in the person enough or just willing to do so much for that person that it negates and overshadows the person themselves and their talents. And we've been very fortunate. We've gotten some team members that have come in that it's their first job, and it may be in their mid-20s or late 20s, and sometimes in their 40s. And really have not been able to go out and show what they're capable of doing. And it's usually a caregiver, a parent, someone like that is enabled. And that's unfortunate, David, but again, that person being associated and socialized in a group of persons or people that are performance-based, I would tell you I've been more, I would say, encouraged in the last 3 to 5 years of seeing our industry really push for persons who are blind or visually impaired or disabled to do more. I love hearing that. Hey, the person's been our agency for 30 years, and now we're starting to cross-train. To me, I can't go back and say, why didn't you do that to start? Right. But what I can do is say, applaud what you're doing today. Now, out of some of the conversations where we've heard people talk about good jobs or optimal jobs, it's difficult. It's very difficult to me because, again, they're not allowing that person to define for themselves. They're trying to create a pathway for that person and individual. I think it's difficult. Most people like being on a team. That's a true statement. Again, it goes to socialize. But when you start talking and taking that person out of that team environment and you put them in a individual type of spotlight where they may say, hey, we think you'd be good in management. The person's not good in crowds. They have a problem with public speaking. Well, now you frighten that person, and you may have discouraged them from ever doing anything again. I think it's a fine line, David. So I'm careful when we start talking about good and optimal jobs, just due to the fact from experience and knowing what person's capabilities and talents are. But again, that's going to know your team. That helps a lot. But again, I'm going to go back and tell you something that I mentioned earlier is I encourage people to try something new. And we encourage at AIB, if there's a new opportunity outside of AIB, we encourage that. We've had numerous people go out and try, and some be very successful, and some fail. And some people who have been successful have still come back. And you're saying, Chris, why would they do that? They were successful in their endeavor because they felt more comfortable at AIB. Again, David, I'm a creature of habit. I'm going to make fun of myself. I've eaten McAllister's about 4 or 5 times a week for my dinner. And the first thing, I've been on a little vacation. I came in last night off a plane, and the first thing I did was go to McAllister's. I'm comfortable. That's my eating habits. That's what I do. And by the way, it's a deli. But to me, that makes me comfortable. And so people want to be comfortable, and at times they don't want someone telling them what to do. And that's okay. Not with their career. They get the choice. And I think you said something earlier, and you and I talk about this. Independence is so key. But I'm going to put choice right on the same level. I think it's so important. I get the choice of working at this agency or this job or this industry because I want to. And if I want to be the best garbage collector in the world, kudos. If I want to be the best attorney in the world, kudos. But please understand, it's what I want, not necessarily somebody has predetermined for me.
I totally agree with you. And from an employer's perspective, when we talk about, you're talking about development and cross-training and so forth, you've worked in private sector organizations before, and did that company say, Chris, what is it that you want to be when you grow up? And
by the way, David, people still are asking me that. So.
What do you want to be when you grow up, and how can we help you get there? Do those conversations happen? And I know from just personal experience with my past, that doesn't typically happen. You have an annual performance review. You talk about your goals, talk about where you want to go, but it's not from an expectation that I have that my employer is going to provide me the education or to hold my hand through this process.
It's unfortunate, but you kind of said it there. It's hold your hand. That's not how industry is built. They bring in talent knows how to do that job or task. They hire for that. Now, there are occasions where somebody has taken advantage of that person's skill set or knowledge and say, hey, you're great with people. Have you ever thought about PR? Have you ever thought about marketing? Have you ever thought about sales because you're in production today? Hey, you've got a great voice. You might want to think about public speaking. You might want to look at our PR side. Hey, you've got a great disposition and great with conflict. HR may be something. That does happen. I don't want to deter somebody from doing so, but organizations usually don't do so because, look, they've got investors. They've got people they're accountable to, and they've got to hit their marks quickly, and usually that's a time-consuming, long-term output of and really investment of that person with very little, if no, return, because what happens is if they get the talent, they'll move on pretty quickly because they can make a higher rate of pay somewhere. So if I go back and I invest in that person and they leave, today that's okay in what we do. But in a for-profit world, they're looking for somebody that comes in pretty quickly that can make a difference in their bottom line.
Yeah, and I'm not saying, in terms of culture, inclusion, and organizational culture of bringing people up. There's a lot of companies that do that where you start in the mailroom and next thing you know, you're in that corner office with the window that seems to be a really desired spot. So it does happen where people are able to do that, but they are taking, maybe it sounds the wrong way, but they're taking advantage of the opportunities that are presented to them.
Fair.
And it should be the same, right? As you're talking, there's a lot of resources that go into that. There's a lot of expense in terms of creating that plan and monitoring, measuring, et cetera, that most companies, like you said, won't typically do that. So it's not typically, as we say in our industry, typically found in the community.
Right.
Should AIB or the Ability One program have different expectations than any other employer?
It's a good question. At times, I think, yes, understanding our team, understand the people we serve, I think we do to a point, David. And I don't talk about this, but I talk about talents and limitations differently. But what's important is understand, how can I better serve our community, our team, knowing that hey, look, they're going to be learning differently. Their knowledge is going to come from digital. You and I have had that discussion recently. Make sure I'm providing the information digitally rather than in printed form. I may have to teach differently. I may have to promote differently. But those are some of the things that would help our clientele and our team. But at the same time, are we understanding? Yes, to a point, because at the end of the day, we talk about what can we do for our team. I can't say that happens every day at Ford. I can't say that. They have expectations that person's got everything they need. For someone who's blind, visually impaired, and or disabled, there's an accommodation sometimes that comes along with that person. And I will tell you, most organizations steer away from that. They see it as a problem. I see it as an opportunity. Right. You say, Chris, why do you see it as an opportunity? Because I see that person with talent. I see that person with drive. They came in, they wanted to work. And that person, and again, I use you a lot. You know I do. Look, David, you went the extra mile. And I say that because I know you had to walk about a mile to get to the bus stop. So I use that somewhat to be humorous, but at the same time, you went that extra mile to continue to shore up your family's success, your success, but being independent, but doing what you thought was best. Because it would have been really, really easy to say, hey, I can't do this. I'll stay in this area in which, the government will give you subsidies to live and do whatever. But you wanted more, and kudos to you. I will tell you, there are people that say, I can't and I don't want to. I'm not going to say what's wrong or right. That's not for me to decide.
Absolutely.
But what I can tell you is, if you want the opportunity, I think we should provide the opportunity, the training, and the resources. So I think that's a fair assessment. Now, that being said, I mentioned some of the service providers. They give some additional skill sets that allow them to be successful when they come into work.
So, a lot of times companies are going to bring in an employee that has the skill sets for that particular job. And they're also going to provide you some other tools that you already have the skill sets to do. So as long as the software is accessible, I have the skill sets, I should be able to come in and do that job. And you as the employer should expect me to be able to accomplish the same task, just doing it a little bit differently, to accomplish that same task that somebody without a disability is going to do. And during that process as I'm learning the roles and the different expectations of the job, and I find that my talents lead to that position or to a newer position, then I need to make sure I'm setting myself up to become that specialist 2 instead of a specialist 1 or whatever it is, and take that next step up. And that's what I think this program really does. In a good job is providing those pathways that if you utilize what you have and what you're gaining from work, then the opportunity is there. You should take it if you want to, but you shouldn't have to be forced to or kept in a position as a production person versus saying, well, you'd be really good here in accounting or IT or public relations. I think you should really consider that. And where somebody says, well, no, I don't want to do that. I want to stay where I'm at. And they should have that choice to do that as well.
Well, you go back to choice. I mean,
right,
that's really a big deal, choice. David, look, I struggle with this because, look, I met with somebody a couple of days ago, and it was actually a private for-profit company, and the person was military and had an accident, and I realized they needed an education, and they actually were paralyzed. I was fortunate, had surgery, and got over that, and today is in great shape and able to walk and do all the things they need to do, but realized pretty quickly that the military was no longer part of their future. So took advantage of some of the resources that were provided by being in the military, and they went to college. And they said, hey, if I want to go where I want to go, where I think my future can lead me, I probably need a master's. I think undergraduate, 4-year undergraduate degree is good, but I probably need a master's. Not only do I need a master's, I need it from a business school. I need it from a big-time business school. Mm-hmm. That person today is the CEO of a $4 billion company, and at 29 years old, they were paralyzed and military, and they thought the military was where they were going to be for the rest of their life.
Sure.
That changes the outlook. But that's somebody who's driven and said, I realize the path that I want to be on. Nobody told that person they need to be a CEO. Mm-hmm. Nobody told that person. And they were their dream job, by the way. Mm-hmm. They were a SEAL. They were a Navy SEAL, and they thought that was everything they wanted in life. And
right.
kudos.
Yeah,
but all of a sudden, things change. But at the same time, if I'm working in a warehouse and my job is to be a picker, let's just say that's all I do. That's all I want to do. I'm a picker-packer, and I want to do, or I want to get in shipping. I want to do quality control. But I love this. This is what I like. I enjoy it. I like coming to work at 7 in the morning. I like leaving at 3:30. That works for my life. Well, don't you want an advancement? I just told somebody this is what I want to do. My advancement is when I go home, because I'm also working with my children in baseball or on their computer or whatever. It gives me the time to do so. Right. Or I like taking walks, and me and my wife love to go, or me and my husband love to go walking. Those are things that, we can't tell a person what makes them. They define themselves. Mm-hmm. And so, therefore, I think what we've gotten in trouble in is trying to manage a person's career that didn't ask for it managed. And I think we've overstepped our boundaries. I'm not big on putting titles and labels on people. I can't stand it. People say, well, Chris, why do you say blind, visually impaired all the time? Well, I can't stand the word BVI. I don't want somebody to put a title on me. Mm-hmm. I'm not interested. My name's Chris. Your name is David. And I treat each person the same. And I give them the same opportunity, no different than what their career path, what they do for a living, no matter. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I think what's happened is we've gotten to politicization of the Ability One program. And what's happened is you see people coming out giving us what their thoughts are rather than what's actual. Mm-hmm. That's unfortunate, because it'd be real easy if I sat down and say, hey, David, tell me what's important to you. Well, there's 30,000 people, 40,000 people in the Ability One program. And what I would tell people to do, get busy. Mm-hmm. Just go out and go talk to each person if you really want to know.
Yeah. And it's also my responsibility, or AIB and the Ability One program, to go out and tell that story as well. Right? And you and I talk, and I tell you it a lot. If we don't tell our story, somebody else will.
Correct.
And they'll most likely get it wrong. So being able to, and whether it's to our legislators or to big organizations or the person on the street, right, is we got to be able to accurately and clearly communicate what those needs are and what we are doing to improve lives of people with disabilities.
So I think, David, and this is, again, I'm getting in trouble here. I'm plugging you more than I. But I think AIB has gotten better at telling our story by you telling your story. And it's just not to our community. It's at a national level, not state, but at a national level. And we have congressmen and senators and decision makers understanding more because of your story. Unfortunate that they don't know that as they go into office. You can't know everything. Mm-hmm. You don't know all your constituents. But at the end of the day, I think you have done a great job, and it's helped AIB and us be more sensitive, just end of the day. Mm-hmm. And I think agencies have gotten better, Ability One agencies, and I know it has. I think you came through the program. Is that correct? The Ability, what was that? The
Business Management
program. Mm-hmm. And that was put on by a large university, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the kind of thing that I think we've invested into to assure that we're getting the message out and we're getting representation of not just the person, but of the abilities. And again, I keep saying abilities. Mm-hmm. You've not heard me say disabilities a lot. Mm-hmm. Again, those are easy things to talk about, David. But again, I think it's your job, and I think you're doing a fantastic job to tell that in the community, the state, and a national level. But we've had to go out and do that. It's not like they're coming to us. Mm-hmm. And
right,
I think that's important.
Yeah, we got to be proactive.
Got to be very proactive. And you talked about that of self-advocating, and you advocate for AIB, and there's others, other agencies that are out there advocating for themselves.
Yeah.
And eventually, it gets the right ear, but it takes time. Mm-hmm. And you started this out, years and years ago, and I remember when we were talking about this, one conversation at a time. Mm-hmm. But we don't know what kind of harvest we're going to get out of that conversation. Is it going to be a day, a week, a month, a year, or years?
Absolutely.
We don't know.
Yeah, unfortunately, oftentimes change is slow when it comes to public policy or other activities are really slow. But it's important to continue to stay in the fight and important to continue to have these conversations. When you were talking about abilities, and it's easy for you to say abilities. What I find a lot of times is that people are afraid to have that conversation.
Why?
I was going to ask you why.
Why
do you think? Why do you think?
I know exactly why. People are intimidated by a wheelchair. People are intimidated by a trachea. People are intimidated by a cane or a dog. They're intimidated. It's different, David. You remember change is slow. Mm-hmm. Well, so is incorporating something that's different. We're a different studio today. Mm-hmm. Our conversation's easy because we've been doing it so long. We could talk anywhere. We go on the side of the street and have the same conversation. Mm-hmm. But that's okay, but we've done it so long. But if we have not done this, if it was our first or second show, that'd be difficult. Mm-hmm. It's just a little awkward.
Right.
That's all. And once you get through the awkwardness, it's okay. I think, to me, David, and again, I absolutely love what I do. I love what I do. Mm-hmm. It's challenging, but at the same time, I tend to see the best in people. And I say people, I didn't say disabled people. Mm-hmm. So I tend to put a class of people. I get in so much trouble politically because you didn't put that group, this group. That. Well, you know what, man, I'm about done with groups. I let somebody else put that division. At AIB, we have a team handbook. We don't have an employee handbook. Mm-hmm. We're all a team. We all have roles to play. So I could care less if this person is that and that person's this. That's wonderful. Everybody wants to be part of a club. That's wonderful. Everybody wants to be part of this organization. That's wonderful. At the end of the day, I just want people, and I'm just interested in the person themselves, their name, what they do, and for the organization, what can they promote for the organization? Can they help us perform and get our job done that we need done? Mm-hmm. I could care less what kind of vision or what they have. Of course, our job at the end of the day is employ people who are blind or visually impaired. But along the way, we're changing lives, David, and we know that. Mm-hmm. And it's through independence. It's by giving an opinion, giving options, taking care of their families, taking care of themselves, enriching what they may or may have not known.
Right.
So we are making a difference, and to me, that's where I'm frustrated politically, professionally, and personally because of we've gotten off on a good or optimal job. Again, I'm probably different than most, very hands-on, and as far as CEO is concerned, I believe I'm the only one who started out filling shelves in stores. Mm-hmm. And I take a lot of pride in that. And the reason being is because I got to know what it was from the ground up.
Sure.
And so I see things, my perspective's different. Mm-hmm. Well, David, you had sight one day. Back, years ago, you had sight. Mm-hmm. So you see things from two different ways. You see it as a person with vision loss and with vision.
Right.
I love asking people, and I love that it's a good conversation. I apologize going a little sideways on this, but I asked somebody, do you remember what the color red was like? They said, oh, yeah, I remember that color. And I asked them to explain it to me. And it's for me. I want to know. Mm-hmm. I'm not visually impaired, so I want to know. I have questions. I want to know. So you asked a question, why is it all? Because we're afraid to ask questions. Mm-hmm. My God, the questions I asked you, Dave, you're like, Chris, it's probably not a good thing. Glad the door's closed. But those are the things that need to be done because I can't understand unless I ask. So I answer that with coming back and saying to you, then why is it not being told? So I don't want somebody to have to come up and detail it and make it known unless they want it known. Mm-hmm. But I also don't want it awkward if I ask a question. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest challenge. I'm stopped on the street all the time and asked about the service dog or asked about blindness, and what I can see, what I can't see, and all those things. And sometimes I just want to get down the street and not be bothered. Other times I want to stop and say, yeah, you know what? Good question. Let's have that conversation, because the more you know, the better you are. And to say, hey, I met this guy, or I met the dog, and there's a guy being pulled behind him, and he's doing this, he's living this life that he wants to do, and doing all these things. It's just amazing. So the next time that he encounters someone who is blind, he may have a different perception of what that person is doing. Maybe he's not just sitting home. Maybe he's going to work, or he's going to take care of his family, or going to visit somebody, whatever it is, and have that different perception. And that's what I really hope that our conversations have when I'm out in the community, whether it's just a networking event or you and I are on Capitol Hill, is to say that I'm educating you on what we do to change lives for people, the way you said it. And we need you to support this by doing this action, or sitting down with those who make the laws or program and say, here's what's really going on. You're coming from the left, I'm coming from the right, and let's meet in the center somewhere and find a solution that works, so that everybody who has the will and desire to work has that opportunity.
It's challenging from the perspective of you don't know unless you know. And the only way you're going to know is either volunteer to tell someone, or they're going to have to ask. Because when you assume, it's usually you make the wrong assumption.
Right, absolutely.
And I think that's what's happened politically, is a lot of people have assumed they've gotten some data from interesting, I'll say that, I don't want to say right or wrong, but interesting gathering sources. And they've made some assumptions. Now, part of their job is to assume. But unless you got good data, you're going to make a bad assumption. You're going to make it'll have a bad outcome. Not one person politically has come to me and asked my opinion. I've got a lot of colleagues that they are in a similar boat. Not one person has come to them and asked them who's putting out all the initiatives and defining what's good and optimal, and not one person. But they've made the decision, not on most, but a very small portion of some.
Sure.
And that's difficult, because if I come across one person or two persons who are blind and visually impaired who don't want to work, they like the opportunity that, look, it's just not for me. I don't like being society. It's just not for me. I feel awkward. I can't say what reasons why, but they choose to stay at home. That person takes that perception with them. That now becomes all. So to your point, do you feel, do you feel responsible, or do you feel like you have to answer someone who asks that question about blindness? Yeah, you don't always want that weight, but you do it because you know there's something behind it. That person could be a decision maker in their work or their community, or could grow to be that person. At the end of the day, you just could be part of a conversation that educates that person, because one day may have someone who's blind or visually impaired in their family. So there's so many different reasons, and I'm fortunate. I've been in a lot of those discussions with you, and you handle it wonderfully. And but the best way to do it is direct and honest. But I go back to the persons who are making these decisions. I don't believe they have all the data they need to be making the decisions they are today. And because I will tell you, most of the persons that I come across are happy with their jobs. They think, and there's a person in our organization that I love hearing talk. They are so very happy. They put their family through college, and they wouldn't have the opportunity because they were from another country. And it means so much to me when I hear this person speak, because not only are they thankful, they want to do more, and they're providing more to the organization than we could actually give to them. And that's what it's about, David. It really is to me. I don't think of AIB as, quote unquote, a nonprofit. I do know we're a nonprofit. I think it's a small business. and your greatest assets is your team. And if you've got a high-performing team, you're going to do well. We're fortunate enough we have a high-performing team. And it doesn't matter if they're blind, visually impaired, but they are performance-based. They know what they're doing. They're cross-trained. And I think AIB has got a great vibe. Remember that culture thing that we talked about? That's my, dive at trying to be cool, going from culture to vibe. But I think all those things come into play to making a person happy and wanting them to stay where they're at. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think, especially in today's workforce, people are looking for something to be connected to be connected to their employer. And as you were saying, I know that person that you're talking about, in that being able to provide for your family, being able to have a team that you're part of, being part of something is really important, especially I think in the younger workforce, is everybody wants to be part of something. And if you can provide that, then you're going to have a great workforce. You're going to have a high-performing team. There's all kinds of numbers that say that, if you hire, in your inclusion programs, you hire people with disabilities, the revenue increases, the profits increase, but oftentimes they leave out the fact that you also build that a more collaborative team, right? You build a team that is maybe a little more empathetic or understanding, that they can now have those conversations and bring their team along. And I think that gets left out of a lot of conversations is, well, especially in our industry where we talk that you have to have a certain percentage of people that are blind to be able to stay in this program, and you're kind of putting them in a box and you're going to keep them there, when in reality we're just focused on a mission and we realize the talents and we're going to hire from that labor pool and provide the opportunities for those upward mobility. So disability employment is disability employment, whether it's within AIB or within large corporation or small business, is to be able to look at the talent, bring them up, coach them just as you were being coached at you're a golfer, right? You've got a good swing, but you hire a coach to help you with that swing so that you can drive the ball farther. Well, we're doing the same thing, is helping people drive that ball a little bit further. So,
yeah, David, and again, I'm going to ask kind of a difficult question at the end here is the responsibility. Again, it goes back to the person and the organization. But what's difficult is when that person doesn't buy in, you've got to encourage. You have to do things differently. And I will tell you, if it's a for-profit organization, I think it's self-serving. Either you're taking care of an issue we have, or we're going to let you go. You talked about understanding. That's the difference in understanding who our team is ahead of time and knowing some of the challenges that present. That's what makes our program different. Look, that goes into why we're able to have the kind of long-term employment that we're at. And I think our average tenure now is at about eight and a half years. Well, that speaks volumes, because that person does have a choice.
Right.
But the person's happy. So, again, am I encouraging that person to leave? No, but if they want to, I'll be glad to work with them anyway and help them train to move on if they think they've got something better or different they want to do. And I think that goes back to supporting that person to reach their goals. But to mandate it, I think it's difficult, and I think that's what's trying to be done in D.C.
Sure. Yeah, I totally agree with you. If you want to know, right, I asked the question, why don't people ask? So if we're not asking the questions, then we can't make the change, or we can't support or help individuals who are blind get their dreams met in terms of what they want to do. And if they're not speaking up, then we can't help them. So you say, well, what happens in private sector is you're not performing and you're not coachable, and for whatever reason you don't want to buy in, then you're usually cut from that position and you go off and find something else. The same happens within our organization, right? It's unfortunate. We provided you all the resources, all the tools, all the support, and if you're just not able to do that, whether it's physical or emotional or behavioral, that you can't make those changes, then just like in anywhere else, then you would end up being released and go on from there. We also do just the opposite, is provide that training and move people up and are able to then backfill those positions with new hires, and that's really exciting to do.
Expectation of that person to do a good job, and the expectations show up to do a good job while they're there and put the kind of energy that everyone else does is so very important. But I'm glad you said that, because it goes back to accountability, and that is individually owned.
Absolutely.
And that is not organizational. So when somebody says good or optimal, it is up to that person to make sure they're performing at a high level to keep and to assure that they're moving forward, not just for the organization, but for themselves.
Yeah, and regardless of what that job is, that's a job that you chose, or
right.
that I chose, right?
That's correct, for that choice.
And not to let anybody else dictate whether that's a good job or an optimal job. Is
100%.
Right, and people say a job is a job, but a lot of times, as we started off this conversation at the top, it's a lot more than that. It's satisfaction, personal satisfaction, that, hey, I did 1 million of these little widgets today, and that was my personal best, and I feel really good about it. Or you can say, I met a new coworker, and now I'm going out and we're hanging out outside of work and things like that. So it brings more to just a paycheck, that if you're performing and you're doing something that you really enjoy, then you should be able to do it wherever it is that you want to do it.
100%.
So we're at the end here. I'm going to say thank you for having the conversation with me. I always learn something new from you, and where your thoughts are going and how I can best support that, as well as thanking AIB again. And this show is really dedicated to showcasing that with the right training, the right technology, and the right attitude, people who are blind are successful in the workplace and in life.
Thank you, David.
Thank you for listening to Changing the Perception of Blindness, one conversation at a time, with your host, David Steinmetz. Be sure to subscribe to Changing the Perception of Blindness, one conversation at a time, on your favorite podcast platform, and tune in live on Phoenix Business RadioX every third Friday at 9 a.m. We hope you feel inspired by today's conversation, and maybe we've even sparked a new idea or opportunity.